Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Tech in 10, the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs post-game show from the Ruston Daily Leader. I am sports reporter Matt Belinson, and Tech in 10 is brought to you by Northern Louisiana Medical Center. Thanks to them for sponsoring us this season. I am coming to you live from Gerald Ford Stadium here in Dallas. SMU 38, Louisiana Tech 14. It was about as ugly as the final score indicated. Louisiana Tech down 31-0 at halftime. From what could go wrong, it did. Very slow offense. Defense was beat over the secondary multiple times. Just couldn't sustain enough, stops early on. Tech special teams, once again, kind of some head-scratching moves, really bad decisions, some costly penalties. Pretty much, like I said, everything that could go wrong did go wrong for this team today. And as a result, Louisiana Tech is now 1-1 on the season. I think it's important to note, Louisiana Tech, for all the talk in the offseason, I think it's important for fans to recognize. I know today, a pretty ugly loss. A lot of things didn't go right, which I'll get into. But I think it's important off the top to recognize that, this team and its goals are still in focus. They still want to win a Conference USA title. They still want to contend, for a bowl game. Those goals are still, attainable. Obviously, today exposed a lot of weaknesses. SMU, it's led the American in passing yardage and passing offense for a number of years now. So I don't think it's too much of a shock to fans to see, hey, the Mustangs can still score. Despite the fact this was Preston Stone's, first. He started a game before, but this is his first start, I guess, officially being the guy. And I thought he played really well, and SMU did a good job of, exposing Louisiana Tech. But I think it's really important to recognize that for as ugly as today was, it doesn't change the fact that Louisiana Tech is 1-0 in conference play. They're still 1-0 in conference play. Everything is still in front of them. And Sonny Cumbie, admitted post-game that, certainly as a competitor and, as players and coaches, they're going to take things to learn, from this game. But, just from an observer in my perspective, if you're asking me, I feel like this is a game you can just flush away just in terms of the result. Obviously, you need to learn things, how to defend better in the secondary without holding. A lot of penalties today. Defensively, you're still not getting after the quarterback like you need to. Offensively, you're not running the ball. And offensively, Hank still needs, I think, find an earlier rhythm to kind of get comfortable in this offense. Some ups and some downs for him today. But I think just in general, before I get started, just grand picture, Louisiana Tech is 1-1 overall, 1-1 in conference play. I don't think it's time to panic. Certainly today was not encouraging. As someone that, drove here to Dallas, certainly was hoping for a more competitive game, but, obviously Louisiana Tech has a lot more in front of it. So I think that's the big picture, is that for as ugly as today was, this team's goals are still, in front of them. That being said, I'm going to walk through maybe what I found to be the most alarming points from today that I feel like maybe need to be addressed going forward if this team is going to reach its goals. Number one, in my opinion, is the offensive line. I'm having a real hard time figuring out kind of where exactly the disconnect is coming from. Hank Bachmeier was sacked 6 times today. Through 2 games, he's been sacked 8 times. A couple more, quarterback hits and other things like that. He has been pressured so much, and today was, obviously the first time where he really felt the heat. And then on the offensive line, also in the run game, this run game is averaging. This isn't a typo. Through 2 games, 0.44 yards rushing through 2 games. Now again, a big qualifier. You're missing Marquise Crosby. You're missing Tyree Shelton. That's your 1-2 on the depth chart right there that are not playing. They have not played. Right now you're asking a true freshman in Jacob Fields, true freshman in Keith Willis Jr., and then, Charvis Thornton, who came off, a little bit of an injury scare there in week 1. So that's kind of who you're trusting in your running back room right now without those top 2 guys. So I understand that the production, is certainly not the level that it could be at its ceiling. But 0.44 yards rushing, I mean, certainly we have, had a lot of high praise for Hank Bachmeier week 1, but even so, I mean, the run game just has to improve. And I think it starts up front with this offensive line. Sonny Cumbie talked post-game about, having a better understanding of kind of protection calls and where guys need to be on assignments. There were so many times where after Hank Bachmeier was sacked, and he obviously, I couldn't hear what he was saying, but it was clear that he was, visibly, like, asking the offensive lineman, like, where are you going? What are you doing? And I think it's so important 2 games into the year I mean, Cyrus Allen went out with today's game with an ankle injury that obviously didn't have anything to do with the offensive line, but you potentially lose another piece on this offense. You're just asking Hank Bachmeier to carry more of a load and look at guys a little bit longer and try and have guys get open, and he needs an offensive line in front of him to protect him. Now again, SMU brought in a lot of transfers. Defensively was not that good last year, but defensively brought a lot of pressure today, and Louisiana Tech was unable to match it. So I think for me today, the biggest concern was the offensive line, both in starting any sort of running lanes for the run game, and protecting Hank Bachmeier. That being said, Cumbie did say that some of the run game issues are coming from the fact that yes, you're starting two underclassmen back there right now. And they just have to trust their reads a little bit more. There were a couple plays today where if Keith or Jacob, if they take the run right when it's there, it could be a 5-10 yard gain. Instead, Louisiana Tech finishes with under 30 yards rushing. You just can't have that. Again, I know, like I said, SMU, very good team in the American Athletic Conference, soon to be ACC, but you can't just go into a game and be like, well, we got two underclassmen, so what can we really expect out of the run game? That area just has to be improved, and I think it starts up front with the big guys. So that group really needs to, I think, hit the film here and figure out what's going on, because these first two games, there's been a lot to be concerned about. I think the second piece is less important, but I think it still needs to be addressed. The defense is just not pressuring the quarterback enough. It had 2 sacks, against FIU in week 1. Deshaun Hall, and, Michael Clark, a couple others got to the quarterback. But today, 0 sacks. Again, when an offense is clicking like SMU and they put up 31 points in the first half, you have to challenge them. You have to show them that you're not just going to roll over. And there were too many times when, Preston Stone just stood back there and had plenty of time for his receivers to beat, man coverage. And, he took advantage multiple times. And I think it just comes from a lack of pass rush. Again, the 2 games in, I don't want to make too, big of a deal. But again, when you bring in all these transfers and you hope that this defense makes a turnaround, through 2 games you have 2 sacks. It just has to be improved. Again, I'm not going to say they're all just failures as transfers. They haven't brought anything to the table. Again, SMU's a good team. They're probably going to contend for the American this year. So again, that's a good measuring stick to see where you are. But again, you just have to pressure the quarterback. And in this league, you're going to be playing a Western Kentucky team in a few weeks here. You're going to be playing Liberty, in November. I mean, you're going to face some offenses that are going to throw the ball, that are going to challenge your defensive backs. They're going to challenge your linebackers, and you have to get after the quarterback. And so I think for Louisiana Tech, it has to start up front on both sides of the ball, really. But I'm more concerned with the offensive line compared to the defensive line. That being said, I thought both kind of struggled today. And then, last but not least, I thought Hank Bachmeier, he had an okay game, pretty bad, just kind of bad luck there on the interception. I think that came from maybe some poor play calling. It seemed like for pretty much the entire first half, most of Louisiana Tech's pass attempts were, okay, let's have a receiver run 5 yards and then let's have them, come in breaking on a slant. It seemed like there were really no, downfield shots. Again, Cyrus's early injury probably played a role with that. Smoke isn't exactly a burner, down the sideline. He is definitely a middle of the field yak guy. So I can understand why you'd want to target him there. But it just seemed like they keyed in on Hank pretty early and batted his one of his early passes at the line of scrimmage and took it in for an interception for a touchdown. So I thought Hank bounced back from that pretty well. Again, without Cyrus out there for majority of the game, it was kind of hard to really judge, who he was throwing to. I thought Kyle Maxwell had a pretty decent day, 2 catches, 55 yards. Again, you would want to see more, catches out of him. Smoke Harris had an okay game. Definitely let some passes, I think, kind of pass him by, and definitely could have had some more yardage. So I think in general, Hank had an okay game. I think, it just all starts up front. When you get sacked 6 times, I think it's hard to get into a rhythm, and Sonny Cumbie talked about that. I think going forward, he has to find ways to get the ball out of Hank's hands quicker, and he has to get into his playmakers' hands to get upfield. I think there was too many times where, Louisiana Tech, pre-snap motion, and then, okay, well, here's a, 2-yard, route behind the sticks, and we're already, backed up, and then, here comes SMU, they already tackle him. So I think you really have to find ways to get the ball out quicker. If this offensive line needs time to improve, you can't ask Hank to just stand back there and, just take the heat. You can't risk injury with him. So I think going forward, Hank had a pretty okay game. Definitely not as good as week one, but I don't think it's anything to be concerned about. So, again, a pretty ugly performance just overall on the scoreboard. But again, I think if you're a Louisiana Tech fan, it's hard to see right now, but today's result does not impact you in the Conference USA race. Certainly, again, if you get things cleaned up, you come back home. I personally think they're going to blow the doors off Northwestern State. So I think you come back home, this coming weekend, you blow the doors off an FCS team, you get some swagger back, get some confidence back, and then, you see where you go from there. So that's going to do it for me today here at SMU. Again, Louisiana Tech falls 38-14 for the Ruston Daily Leader. I am Matt Belinson. Thank you all for listening. Have a good one.